Go live. Welcome to Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show will have a talk about Linux projects, such as a Linux distribution. You know, I was just thinking, I'm just going to pause my little thing. We haven't done BSD in a while. Is that anything that might be of interest? Okay, just throwing it out there.
No.
Oh, we also talk about
I'm down.
desktop. See, I knew somebody with me. We also talk about desktop environments, applications. We also just chat about news or any variety of topics from the community. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. I'm Nate, Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the OpenSUSE project. And with me today, just a little bit, right, Colin? Just a little bit. I have Swift, Jinda, Colin, Sean, Penguin, Terry, and Ulfnick. How is everybody?
Excellent.
Doing good.
Doing awesome.
Great. Yep, good. Yep. If I unmute, I can say good. Yep.
Yay. All right. Excellent. So be sure to do the straw poll. It's about whether or not you would pay for Linux if you had to. So on the docket for today, we're going to talk about that straw poll. Do our news flight. To make sure the stream's actually going. Do our news flight. And but first, we're going to talk to Colin about what he's been doing in Linux and tech. Colin, what exciting things have you been doing?
Oh, I just made my video. It's been a bit of a slow process, this one, but I've just done my post-install video and trying out my YAD scripts on camera. So that
just really
worked
quick,
out pretty well.
For the cheap seats, what's a YAD script?
Sorry, YAD forms and running scripts from the YAD forms. So
okay.
it's just a form that you make that pops up a little window with buttons on it, and then you can sort of somehow get those buttons to run scripts, just like a GTK window type thing. I mean, if you're not a coder like I'm not, and you just want a little window with some buttons to make it look all fancy dancy, and so you can go click a button and make the magic happen, then that's what I've done. So I've done quite a few, and I plan to make a couple of videos with that working also on Ubuntu and Solus. I chose Solus as well because I still haven't kicked Solus out of my scope of running at this point. So I might even go that way. I'm not sure yet, but just something I wanted to do and have a bit of fun with and learn how to do a bit of scripting and these YAD forms and all that. I even confused myself with how much stuff I put in there. Sometimes I just forget where things are. So it's a whole folder with all the icons and everything in it, and the icons are on the buttons and that. So it's a whole package. People were asking me if I could put it on GitHub, but I tried to upload it to GitHub last night, and it said, "Yowza, that's a lot of files. Do them one at a time or something." So I might have to put it on, I don't know, Google Drive or something like that. Or the Hotmail one. I can't remember what that's called now. But yeah, it's I plan on doing Ubuntu in the next video, running the YAD script. So it runs Ubuntu, it runs Arch Linux with just a GNOME. So it depends what terminal it's calling up. Arch Linux with GNOME and Arch Linux with KDE. So that's got console. So instead of installing different ones, I just went with what the native is out of the box, and then one for Solus. And I've got browser installer, so it installs all these browsers. It removes the browsers if you want. Does all. I'm a big fan of, actually, if you want to install something, you can remove it as well.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So I'm a bit of a fan of that. Yeah. So yeah, it's just trying it out, and it seems to be all working pretty well. So I'm pretty happy at this point. So it's been a long project.
Do you have any links to where your source documentation is, or whatever you're using to build these, what the
No, I've got
project information or whatever?
No, it's just all on computer at this point. So
Okay.
I've got no links or anything to that.
I mean, like the YAD scripts or the YAD whatever, anything about that, any documentation about that?
The YAD forms.
Yeah.
No, I haven't. It's just what's within the forms. So if I was to put it up on Google Drive or something, somebody downloaded, they'll be able to see how the forms are made because it's all there. You can just go into the folders and the and just open the script up, and you'll be able to see how it's done. You could just hack on it and make it your own. So pretty much, you could just all you got to do is change the form and what the name of the comes up on the little GTK box there, which for me it says PCTLC, I think something like that.
Okay.
And you could pretty much change all the scripts to what you want. So there's no real the actual form, the whole thing itself is documentation, pretty much when you think about it. So
yeah, well, I mean, like I don't know if like for how did you discover this whole thing to begin with? Like what sent you down a path to understand even use
okay,
this?
that's a good question. Dan from MyoLinux, not sure if you're familiar with Dan from MyoLinux. He's not doing much stuff on YouTube now. He said he was leaving YouTube, but he does the MyoLinux project, and done some videos a little while ago about YAD forms, and I thought, oh, that looks pretty good. Instead of going into terminal and typing // whatever to run a script, then you could actually get the YAD form with a button to run the script instead, which looks a lot nicer and whatever. And Esnix from Easy Archer, he's done a lot of scripts and that, and I was hacking on one of his scripts where it comes up with a menu, and I decided to use that. And those guys just inspired me to sort of put these two things together, just to make things easier within Arch. So I can update the keyring, I can update the I can just update Arch itself, or I can update the mirror list or whatever. It just does all these different things. So there's utilities within it, and there's also VirtualBox install, Virt Manager installer for all these bases. I've just gone crazy with it. That's why I wasn't doing a lot of content. I was just doing a lot of this YAD forms and scripting. So I was just having a lot of fun. So it's not overly complicated because.
So if somebody wants to get started, where would they go? Like, let's say I want to do something like that to make my life easier. Where would I go to get started in doing that?
I just did random searches on Google. Just used my Google fill and just did a few bit of searching. But I had what Esnix had given me, so I'd sort of just learnt, checking out how he did his scripts and that, and just learnt from there. So I was just, sort of mirroring some of his stuff, and then just if I needed to know a little bit more, I just did some random Google searches. So
okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I did it. It was just, I think sometimes it's okay to hack on something, but you need to do a little bit yourself to sort of, because it hits home a little bit about the learning process, rather than if you're just hacking on something, you're not really learning. So I like to do a little bit more work myself to try and learn and get it in my head how it's done. Yeah, so having a lot of fun with that. So I'm just going to run that through a few videos and then move on to some other stuff after that. So it's been a good journey.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for that. You said you're going to do a video to kind of give an update on how you're doing that?
I did that. I uploaded it Friday night.
Oh,
I think it was Friday night I uploaded the video. So
well, I bet Jinder will find it.
Yeah, I've already done the video, yes.
And put a link somewhere because he's good at that. He's got these, he's very fast and efficient. And I'm building Jinder up because this way I don't have to do that. Well, fantastic. So I don't know if anyone's having trouble seeing the chat in the YouTube stream, but I guess some people are. I don't know.
It's fine for me.
Okay. Yep, I don't know. One of those weird things. There we go. PCTLC video.
Thanks, Jinder.
No problem.
He's great at that. All right, so
gotta be good at something.
Eris, I'm missing Eris today. He's probably doing something very important and so forth. So he put together a straw poll, and I have not looked at the straw poll yet, but I am getting ready to look at it now. So it said if I did vote though. It says, if forced to, would you pay for Linux distribution of your choice to keep using it? If so, how much in a period of 2 years? And this came from Sean. So that's you are the origin of this. So you have not.
This is
yet,
a distro hopper's nightmare.
Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? It would definitely make for hopping distros a little more challenging. So we'll go quickly over those. What's that?
I said, goodness, you're absolutely right in that regard. They'd be like, oh, so am I going to pay for this or pay for that? Like, what in the world?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one thing to think about is, it costs money to have developers. It costs money to run these servers. It costs money to do all these things. The internet bandwidth, everything costs money. And so somehow, by some almost magical coincidence, these distributions that are built on free software, distributing it free to end users, is somehow able to make a buck and keep running. And the fact that a distribution keeps running, to me, is an absolute miracle. So on that, I guess we'll go down the list here and see how it goes. So now this is if forced to, how much would you pay over a period of 2 years? I wonder why 2 years, Sean. Do you have a reason behind 2 years? Or is it just how it shook out?
No particular reason.
Okay. So the number one answer was at 20% or 20.5 is $21 to $30 for every 2 years. So $10 to $15 a year. In number two place for so 17% was 11 to 20. The 14% was 151 or more. At 10% was 81 to 100. And other got 10.34 votes. And I'll get back to the other. 7% gave $31 to $40 for every 2 years. Another 7% said 41 to 60. And then we had 7% at 101 to 150. 3% said unable to pay any amount, and 3% also for $1 to $5. I'll go ahead and look at the other here. I thought those interesting. I thought those are pretty interesting as far as the breakdown. So if you had to spend $10 to $15 a year to keep your distribution running, that's what most people would, at least in this, would go for. And I see a couple of votes came in, but it didn't really change the order. So nice try, everybody. All right, so some of the replies. It says, I'm already donating money to Linux distro I use. I have done this since I started using Linux. I'm also donating to FSF. At the start, I used to pay the same as a Windows license every time I would have bought it, or actually did buy. Like if I bought a laptop with an OEM Windows license, I didn't want MS to be the only OS developer to get money from me, but lately I just do it about once per year. I pay for, so that's one. Another one is I pay for SUSE license every year. At least I think I still do. I have to check. I wonder who said that. It's got monthly donations going for a bit now. Pretty good value for money if you ask me. Another answer. Someone else says, it depends. I donate $50 to Mint every time they issue an upgrade. I donate $25 annually to Draugr OS. I basically pay what I think is reasonable for the amount I make of the distribution. The amount of use I make for the distribution. Mint is my daily, and Draugr OS is my occasional, once or twice a week, gaming platform. I've donated more to Mint than I ever directly paid Microsoft when I use the OS. Another one says, I'm the same way. I donate to Plasma KDE projects that I use constantly, OBS, etc., and donate to their distros I find using interesting work on my primary. I donate to either distros I find doing interesting work on my primary. Okay, so Garuda. That was interesting. So yeah, I do donate to quite a few open source projects and so forth, like OBS, because I'm a regular user of OBS. I feel like I owe it to the developers to pay them something, just kind of like throwing them a bone, I guess, a little bit. And if everyone gives them a little bit of scratch, then they have something that they can actually do with that money, and hopefully, put more time in there. And I did make it a point to let them know I'm using this in OpenSUSE, so that they're just aware. Somebody here, I don't put him on the spot, but so Sean, since you kicked this off, what is the impetus behind it?
Just kind of curious what kind of value people place on their experience with their distribution of choice, and a monetary value is as good a representation as any. So
I got you. Is there any particular distribution that you support financially?
Not currently. I need to take a look into how Nix gets their funding and shoot a few dollars their way. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, I find that, so SUSE is obviously a commercial company, so I do pay for Workstation, the the desktop version of SUSE, because I just want to have some numbers that say, hey, people are interested in Workstation, so they'll put a little more emphasis, a little more time into it. So yeah, I think
I haven't really donated.
Go ahead.
I haven't donated to any distro because I've never really settled on a distro. I did use Linux Mint for quite a while there, but I have donated to Kdenlive and Thunderbird because I use them quite regularly. But OBS is another one I use, which I may give next time a donation to them. So that's probably a good one too. Sometimes I think the free and open source applications are very important for the distro as well. So I think we can jump ship on distros, which a lot of people tend to do in Linux. It's one of those habits. But the one thing, or the one common denominator that you're always using is the application. So that's why. Right. I decided to give to the application. So that was, my thought process on that anyway.
Gotcha. Well, some comments from the YouTube. Prophetic says, oh, just lost it. All right, I'll come back to Prophetic. Leo says, I'd say 25 to 50 years good if we had to pay. Anything is good if you don't. And then, let's see. Henrietta says, I would pay $100 a year. No. And then Prophetic said I would pay $25 a month easy. Makes sense. So that's a few there from. Oh, CCJ 1998 donated to the Critter Project once. That's good. Yeah, I donated to the KDE project. Actually, I just did again recently. Had some kind of campaign going on Twix. So I put that, I just donated to that just because I think it'd be,
It's a funny thing because you pay for Windows. I mean, if you was to buy a Windows disk, I don't know, I think they cost in Australia around about $150 or somewhere around there. But you would probably run that for 10 years, right? So that's probably $15 a year. So, I mean, yeah, I think $50 a year for a Linux distro would be fairly reasonable, I think.
I do wonder if every Linux user did, let's say, even if it was like $5 or $10 a year, I wonder how that would change the amount of work being done on your favorite distribution. I just wonder.
True. I think that would be amazing. I mean, you think about taking that many people, even if it's just a little bit, I mean, you can get a lot done with it. So absolutely, that'd be great.
Yeah. The problem is where does, when it comes to Linux, this is the big problem with Linux is there's so many distros, and where would the most important source of the money need to go? I mean, Canonical has huge backing, right? But there's a lot of other smaller distros that get good funding. I think Linux Mint gets good funding, but then you've got all your other spin-off distros. Where should the money actually go? But $5 to $10 a year from a lot of Linux users, strength in numbers works out pretty well. But where does that pool of money go? And are we just talking about just donate to the distro you're using, I suppose, isn't it? It comes down to.
Well, so some things like the KDE Foundation that supports a lot of projects. Anything under that KDE, umbrella. I almost said
Right.
envelope. But I don't know what
Yes.
umbrella. Envelopes would get wet and fall apart in the rain.
Mhm.
But anything under that KDE and umbrella makes it like gets funding, gets from from that main pool. And there's some other groups too. I think I know the FSF supports a lot of specific projects. I think there's some others I don't really know, but then other things that are very important to me, that to my regular like this, like doing Linux Saloon, which is very important to me. So, and also when I do videos, I use OBS a lot. So I think that it is incumbent upon me to help the developers. So I'm a Patreon supporter of one of the developers, and so I get updates when they come through, and it's a nice write up of the changes and everything else. So I appreciate that. And Ron Singh says Mint, Mozilla, Debian, LibreOffice gets my donations all the time, but I gnash my teeth trying to support smaller apps libraries who are important to my Linux experience, but it's hard to send dollars to them. And sometimes those like smaller developers are part of another group. They're like the GNOME Foundation supports a lot of things too, and so there's you can probably find a way. I'm sure. I also support the FreeCAD project as well, or one of the developers.
And also, here's the thing: a lot of people I see a lot in the forums and stuff complain that a lot of these free and open source projects don't see a lot of improvement or to the level of some of these other professional programs like the Adobe Creative Cloud and all of that. It's because they don't have the funding because people aren't donating. Whereas you have to pay for the Adobe Creative Cloud, which funds the development of that particular software. So it all depends on what your workflow is and what you want to see to improve on these projects. If you want something like OBS to improve, you should be donating every once in a while to that project so that these developers can actually spend the time developing. Because a lot of these open source projects are done as a hobby and not as a full-time job, like the Adobe suite or the Corel suite or any of those other professional programs, which is why I try and make it a point to donate to a lot of stuff. I know I donate to Shotcut quite often because I use Shotcut a lot.
So CCJ 1998 says donating to desktop environments tends to go further than distros, unless the distro develops a lot of software. Most just repackage everybody else's work. It's true, and I know that way back when it was important, K3B was a project for burning CDs or DVDs. I don't know if anyone ever used that.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Yeah, that's a good application. That.
So yeah, it is. Probably still is. I haven't had a need to use it in a while. I need to make like a mixed CD again. I got to go get a CD burner for my computer. Anyway, that aside, I wonder if my van can play burned CDs. I should find out. Got a DVD player in there, Blu-ray. Anyway, the Mandrake, the company, or Mandriva, what later became, actually hired that developer so that they would continue developing and whatever, and push that upstream, of course, too. And so it's really like some of these open source companies, they do a really good job of supporting various developers. I know like there's also another way you can support is there's like bounties. You can put bounties on bugs. So if people like put money toward a bug, and then if someone fixes that bug, they get that bounty. That's another method of sort of developing. It's a little bit more of a mercenary way of doing it, but I kind of like it. And because you're zapping bugs, so it's anyway. But there's different ways to support these things. I've never actually done the bug bounty thing, and that might be bad. So it might be bad to look into something like that.
Well, there are also a few distros that do monetize their work, such as Zorin OS. charges for their pro version. I think Elementary has a pay system within their app center. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
any of that
No,
goes to the distro or not.
To the developers, I believe.
Yeah,
I think it goes to the
but there has to
developers.
be like some overhead in running and maintaining that. So there
True.
may be, you know, like a percentage that goes to the distro. I don't know, but
I can't credit the author of this article because I can't remember. But if you're doing a bug bounty for a large project, I've heard it mentioned that it's a better idea to approach the lead maintainer of the project with that bounty and say, here it is, and you know who should be working on it, so they can sort of orchestrate the resolution of that bounty in a way that it's not sort of circumventing their leadership if it's like a larger project.
You're muted,
Speaking of-
mate.
I didn't actually think about that. Oops. Maybe I'm not doing bloopers anymore. But yeah, that's a good point. So I wonder if there's a resource out there. I've not actually looked. I wonder if there's a resource out there for like how you can help different open source projects. Yeah, you know, the ones that you're interested in. I think I should probably start donating to Thunderbird and doing feature requests, because there's some things I just wish Thunderbird would do that was a little more K organizer like for the calendaring stuff. Like just little things that just kind of irritate me. But
it's been on my mind a lot, especially because like I've thought about this as sort of a problem for a long time, and that is if you donate, it's kind of like you're throwing money into an event horizon, and like maybe the Hawking radiation comes out that you wanted, or maybe it doesn't. And I don't know if anybody knows of like a better strategy. I know bug bounties is one, but of there being some sort of way to connect the money that you are donating to the particular thing that you want, and perhaps ideally be able to track it in some way. I know that adds a bunch of complication, and that's the last thing a dev who is working for free particularly will want, or for near nothing. But yeah, if there's like better options out there, it'd be nice to know about them.
for sure, it would be nice. That should probably be a question, like a research project, I guess. That'd be maybe good to put something like that together. I'm gonna make a little note of that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think like there's been some improvements, but in terms of getting projects funded, but I think that's the next frontier, is to make this more approachable from an individual basis, where a singular individual can kind of sort of direct a project to kind of where they would like to go, I suppose. And then en masse, you'd have a community voice through donation, and there's pros and cons to that. Of course, you'd want to not take that too far, but I think it would help bring in more money and give the community a bit more of a voice in terms of the things that they want.
So I guess, what would you think? It's just a thought experiment here, but what would you say is like the number one application or series of applications? What's in the top 3 that you use? That's for you, Alphanik. I'm just curious.
I think you were cutting out in the beginning. It might be my Bluetooth, or it might have been your microphone.
Could have been both.
But what is the top 3
concert
applications I'd use for what?
Yeah, like in that you
Yeah,
actually
maybe.
use that as far as for like if these applications went away, you would be in a world of hurt, or need to find something else.
Yeah, I mean, Alacrity is, I just like my entire life is Alacrity and Brave browser, but the problem is like I could technically just switch
Mhm.
to like Chromium or XFC4 terminal or whatever. So, and also I adore Krita. GIMP is good. I just personally don't like it so much, so that would be harder if Krita went away. Yeah. And getting into the nitty gritty, I guess I could say SSH, obviously, because I'm a sysadmin, and that would be bad if I lost that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I say, we'll put SSH on the top, and then Alacrity, and I guess Brave Browser.
Okay. What about you, Jinda? What would you
Yeah,
say?
on any given day, like that's all that's open. So yeah.
I got you. So probably a terminal too. There's probably a terminal application. Was it
Yeah.
you?
Well, I mean, anything from MicroVim or whatever.
Was it you that told me about the micro editor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay, so I got to say something. I installed micro on a couple of machines and at work, and holy cow, that makes a world of difference when you can click and go to the location you want, and it gives you line numbers, and the different shortcuts are like the shortcuts you would expect. Yeah, awesome. Like that's really, really.
Welcome to the resistance.
Oh my gosh, micro, nano Vim, you can go fly kite. Micro is the way to go. Absolutely. I'm sure you can make Vim and nano do these things too, but out of the gate, micro, pretty awesome.
Yeah, there you go. Cool.
Jinda, are there any applications that you use pretty heavily that if they just disappeared tomorrow, you'd be maybe not in a world of hurt, but just highly irritated?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think most of the applications I use, I could switch to something else. Like I use Firefox, I could switch to Chrome or Brave, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything that sure, I'd be maybe disappointed, but it wouldn't be for long due to the fact that there's so many more things to replace all the common ones that I use.
Okay. What about desktop environment?
Oh, I use MX Linux. And that would probably make me cry a lot if I lost that.
Yeah, all those MX tools are pretty awesome.
Yes, that's pretty much one of my favorite things on MX Linux.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Sean? Is there anything in particular that if it just poof went away tomorrow, you'd be agitated?
Probably Joplin would be like
Okay.
that's like my crutch for anytime I need a note for anything, it's in there.
That's interesting.
It's a mess, but it's in there. And it can sync between my desktop and my phone. So it's convenient to have, like lists for going out for groceries and things like that. And finding something else that has a Linux desktop app and can sync to my phone. It was hard enough the first time. I don't want to go through that again.
Right. So do you self-host all the synching, all the synchronization between the devices, or how does that done? I've not actually looked into Joplin. I know that Colin's a big fan of
right,
Joplin.
So Joplin, you can do it multiple ways. You can do it through Dropbox. There is their own sync server that they can use. I think there's another one, but I don't remember what it was off the top of my head.
Okay. Let's see. I think if you were to do an edit on your phone and then go back to your computer, and would you have to do anything to make sure that it actually synchronized properly so that you didn't lose something?
You just wait. You just hit the sync button or tell to sync, or wait for the synchronization to happen. Sometimes there are conflicts, and it'll tell you and now there are like two versions of this note, and at that point you just have to decide which one you want to keep, or if you want to merge them, and that's kind of a manual process, but it's just handy on so many levels.
I think I want to try. How easy is it to for Joplin? Hello. How easy is it for like doing like adding pictures and things like that? Is that an easy process, or is that?
I don't think it does pictures, does it?
You can
Does it
paste
do?
a picture in.
Mhm.
Oh,
I've
I've never
done it.
done that before. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But you can paste it into the editor. I haven't tried it from the phone side. That's always been from the desktop side.
Okay.
But really underneath all the notes are done in Markdown anyway. So
Okay.
um,
Might be time to check
Yeah,
out Jopla.
it just synchronizes. I think mine's on Google Drive or the other one, the Microsoft one, but the file's just on there, just syncs. It's really handy. It's just comes real handy when you want to. I mean, I use mine to travel to the east of Australia and back, and just planned my whole trip on that. And I knew that I did it all on desktop, but I synced it to the phone, so I knew that everything was pretty accurate. So that worked out pretty well. It's just syncs, no problem, as long as you got internet or data, you're fine.
That's excellent. Well, we have a couple of new
Yeah.
faces here, as in new as in like I haven't seen him in a while. Ari, you're up late or up early. I'm not sure which. Yeah. Nice to have you. And
Nice to be here.
excellent. John, haven't seen you in a while. I think is your summer sort of slowing down like ever so slightly?
Yeah, this is the first weekend I've had off in a while. Can you guys hear me okay? Am I loud enough?
Yeah, you're great.
Okay, good. Yeah. Sorry, it's a little darker than usual. I'm reversed. I'm on the opposite side of the room as usual. So
Oh, okay.
all my lights are over there.
Are you doing something special on the other side of the room, or did you get evicted from the other side of the room by somebody?
No, I've just got equipment scattered everywhere.
Oh, okay.
So you're listening to me through a $19 mic connected to $10,000 worth of equipment. So
Fantastic. I love it. Well, we were just discussing about Linux distributions, and if you had to pay for it, how much would you be willing to pay, like over a course of 2 years? I know that is that.
I saw that. I thought about. I had too much to like type out, so it didn't end up commenting on that. But
It's all good.
I don't. It'd be hard to put a number on it. I mean, honestly, I get so much use out of Linux, both in my in my day job, my side hustle, my personal life, everything. It'd be hard to cap it. It'd be worth a lot of money. There's several Linux distributions I actually do contribute to, and I'm almost embarrassed to say it. There's a couple of them I don't even use. Like every time there's a new version of what's the one that uses Pantheon? Can't think of what it's called right now. Elementary, yeah. Every time a new version of Elementary comes out, I always pay for the ISO when I download it. Even though I have never been a regular user of that distribution, I'll just use it, for a couple months every time a new version comes out and see what they've done with it and everything. But I've been a monthly contributor to Pop OS since they started that program. It's not much. I want to say I got on at the very beginning when they started that program. I want to say it's maybe like $9 a month or something like that. But since that's one of the main ones, anyway, my point is that I get so much use out of Linux that I'd be willing to pay money for it.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I started on Linux paying for it anyway because I have to buy the boxes. Does anybody here buy boxes? I know Jinda bought boxes of Linux, and that was always a fun experience.
I remember doing that a few times as well.
Yeah, I bought SUSE.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure I did at some point. In fact, I think I bought a SUSE one at some point years ago. But honestly, I started on floppy disks. I mean, when I started using Linux, you had to install from a floppy. So, and from there, I went to doing dial-up. It no joke. It used to take. I remember installing different distributions. One of the reasons I landed on Debian was because I was doing like upgrades and I mean, you do the base install from a floppy, but then anything you like just to download X or something was dial up, and it was not unusual for it to take a day or two to get to download all the stuff that you wanted. And one of the things that first drew me to Debian was it was one of the only distributions. There weren't that many. There were probably less than 10 at that time. But like one of the differences I remember between Red Hat and Debian back then is Red Hat, if your modem got cut off, you had to start from scratch to re-download everything. Debian would pick up where it left off. So that was in the early days. That was one of the things that led me to Debian, because you could get cut off from the modem, get cut off, and instead of starting over at hour 1, you could just pick up where you left off.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of stuff in the chat here. It just it's almost too much to even read at this point, but people commenting about getting their boxes of Mandrake, Red Hat, SUSE, and Best Buy by Barco, and first Mandrake Linux in 2002 at CompUSA. That's fun. Leo brought Mandrake in a box as well. That's fun.
Mine were always out of the magazines. I used to buy, remember the magazines always had free ISOs in them.
Knoppix was one that I remember seeing in the Linux format magazine, I think is what it was, or something like that. So Sleepy Vince said, boxed open Linux here, but it was in the bargain bin. Ouch! Got tossed the bargain bin. Anyway, all right, well, cool. I guess it's about time we should move on to the news for the night. So it's time to muddle away through the Linux news. But a little bit of a change this time. We have a news channel. News channel? That's not quite right. It's not like cable. A news thread. What is it called? In Telegram. So if you have any news suggestions, you can pop them right in there. So this is largely came from the community. These different topics. So the first one that was actually thrown in there was Nvidia is going to make ARM-based PC chips in a major new challenge to Intel. So CPUs specifically. So on October 23rd, from Reuters, says Nvidia, who dominates the market for artificial intelligence computing chips, now is coming after Intel's longtime stronghold of the personal computer. Nvidia has quietly began designing central processing units that would run Microsoft's Windows operating system and use technology from the ARM holdings. Two people familiar with the matter told Reuters. Anytime I hear two people familiar with the matter, I'm always like, okay. So Nvidia, their new pursuit is part of Microsoft's effort to help chip companies build ARM-based processors for Windows PCs. Microsoft plans to aim at Apple, which has nearly doubled its market share in the 3 years since releasing its own ARM-based chips in-house for its Mac computers, according to preliminary third quarter data from research from firm IDC. AMD also plans to make chips for PCs with ARM technology, according to two people familiar with that as well. And the article goes on. But so what do you think of this? Is this the could this be the death nail of x86 as a processing platform? Could there be maybe an emergence of an ARM platform, a Microsoft ARM-based platform that Linux would have to target later? I don't know, I find this very interesting. To me, it sounds like a whole new world of lockdown nonsense.
Hopefully, it's not locked down. I mean, I hope they turn out some great machines. Honestly, I mean, at least if history's any judge, it doesn't matter how much they lock it down. People are still going to get Linux on it,
right?
One way or another.
Well, they have all the features.
But hopefully, they won't try and lock it down.
Yeah. So sometimes not all features are available to Linux, which has kind of been an irritation as well. But I wonder. I mean, I think competition is good no matter what. So just because ARM is getting faster and it's more power efficient doesn't mean Intel or an AMD are going to stand still. But if they're also going to build ARM-based chips, that does kind of maybe speak a little bit to the aging x86 architecture a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on that by any means. I'm sure there's people here that know more than I do. But the reality is, even the RISC platform has always been better at certain things, in particular power efficiency versus CISC or x86. I mean, you know, even back in the days when Apple was using the PowerPC, you know, they did not switch from PowerPC to Intel because of any kind of you know, performance gain. I mean, even at that time, the PowerPC chips were faster. What happened is they lost the marketing war. You know, they lost the megahertz war because back then everything was about, you know, your speed and your clock speed, and RISC processors were roughly the same at half the clock speed as the Intel processors were, but that didn't market well. You know, if you were going to buy a computer in the store, did you want a 300 megahertz computer or a 150 megahertz computer? Well, you wanted the 300, you know, and Apple fought that battle for a few years and finally gave up on it and switched to Intel.
Yeah, I remember that those battles way back when, and also, you know, even before that, like when the 8088 was released, it came out. It was the first one like 4 megahertz or 7 megahertz, something like that. I can't remember what it was exactly, but I do recall how like the Commodore 64 running essentially at 1 megahertz, which is technically 2 because of the way the graphics chip and the CPU would share the data lines on alternating cycles. It would actually operate many times more efficiently than the 8088. It was a much more efficient architecture. So even though it was the 8088 architecture had a higher frequency, the way that was configured was more efficient, like per megahertz, more, and also like the way it would fetch a command, execute it, and then like that pipeline was much shorter on the 6502 than the 8088 as well. So there's like all these different
floating point operations. Yeah, floating point operations were massively faster. Like x86 struggled with that for a long time. It's kind of funny, actually. You'd appreciate this, Nate. For a very short time, I was a station manager of a low power TV station down in Northern California, and well into the late 90s. I'm talking like close to, they were still using Amigas for like a lot of the titling and stuff. So when you watch like TV stations, like the, you know, when the chroma keys and stuff, like the titles, the words that show up on the screen, they were using Amigas for that long after Amiga as a company was pretty much defunct. Right. Because, I mean, those Amigas could do real-time video, you know, years before PCs could.
Actually, I just saw this thing today, in fact. Apparently there's some school, I don't know where, I just saw a clip of it, but they have multiple buildings, and all the, like the boilers and all like the HVAC systems are controlled through radio to an Amiga 2000 to this day. And so there's a news team there saying, you know, all this money was spent for upgrading, you know, the stuff at the schools. Why wasn't this changed out? He says, well, frankly, it works, and we'd rather put our money toward other things rather than upgrading this system when we know it's reliable. They said, well, it could go out? Like at what point, you know, aren't you concerned about it just like stop, you know, for it to stop working? And he said, yeah, because we got this last one on eBay. So, I mean, I guess if it works, I don't know. It's a little precarious. I would think there'd be some way to, you know, make it. I don't know. There's actually you can run it off of you can replace a CPU now on Amiga with a Raspberry Pi compute module. So I guess there's that. So I suppose, you know, you can make it work.
Usually the challenge with this stuff is finding anybody who knows how to run it. You gotta find like the guy who knows how to get the software installed on an old Amiga and make it run.
That was pretty simple. Or you know, I'm thinking like Cobalt programmers. Like, you know, there's not a whole lot of those remaining. Who knows? Maybe people start learning it again. Anyway, so I thought that was interesting. Nvidia is building CPUs, or they're planning to, working on it. The CPU wars are back, I guess, in full swing.
So haven't Am I crazy? I thought Nvidia, haven't they been building CPUs for a while?
Yeah,
Didn't
not
they build?
They did. So for like ARM-based systems, I think the CPU that's in the Nintendo Switch, I believe that's a Nvidia-based CPU.
Yeah,
I think.
And that test machine that Microsoft did, they had that one ARM machine that they did a while back. I could have sworn that was done by Nvidia too.
Don't they have their own CPU for the home consoles that run Android? And didn't they also collaborate with the first Teslas, which are literally called Tesla CPUs as well?
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
but that's a sheer coincidence, I think.
I thought they'd been making them for a while.
Yeah, I'm sure to some degree they've been around for quite a while, or to some degree. All right, so some exciting news. It's actually about a month old now, but we didn't get to it earlier. But maybe you've heard the OpenSUSE project has got a new distribution that they're releasing. It's called Slowroll. Has anybody heard of this? OpenSUSE Slowroll. I'll read this a little bit and I'll give my 2 cents. But so they're choosing to keep the name Slowroll. It was initially just a name thrown out there, but so choosing a name for anything is not an easy task. The detail can wield significant influence, which is why a survey was made. A survey to make the decision about renaming Slowroll was presented. So Slowroll is a new distribution based on Tumbleweed, but rolls out updates slower. It is designed to implement updates at a pace of 1 or 2 months, integrating bug fixes and addressing common vulnerabilities and exposures issues as they emerge. As well as all things in open source, the name was presented along with the ideas for distribution, and discussion took place about the details surrounding Slowroll. The origin of the name was self-describing the distribution, but other names for Slowroll were proposed, so the renaming of it was to put to a vote. All names there were proposed were including the survey. So the different names were Slowroll, Driftwood, Snowroll, Drift, Wave, Orbit, Lunar, and Tide. And so Slowroll got 46%, and then the distant second at 25% for Driftwood. So I don't know if anyone knows anything about Slowroll, but basically, in a nutshell, it's just the kind of some of the backstories. So Leap, OpenSUSE Leap is basically going to go away. That's a static release distribution, and for different reasons. One, the SUSE itself, they're going to go away from that model of distribution to more of an immutable, and have like the new base is going to be called ALP, and I can't remember exactly what that stands for offhand. But anyway, so that's kind of the new movement, because apparently the expenses of keeping a distribution in like a static form, the traditional way, is too cost prohibitive with the amount of packages and everything else. So it's going to make it so it's more maintainable long term. So it kind of leaves a bit of a gap in the for other, between Tumbleweed and Leap. It kind of leaves that there's a bit of a hole there. So Slowroll kind of fills that gap. The other thing too is like the excitement around developers like helping with Leap had kind of fallen away. More people are interested in Tumbleweed because it's more exciting, and so there'll be a little more synergy in the development of Slowroll because it's based on Tumbleweed more closely, and so forth. Anyway, so it's just interesting to see that there's and this might be this actually might be a much better distribution for probably a more typical user, user, I think. A typical loser. Good job. Anyway, so
I was just going to say I love the idea, but then you called me a loser, and now I don't know if I want to admit that or not.
Well, I know I am.
Yeah, we're all losers. That makes me think of the group back. I mean, come on.
And the official song is Slow Your Roll by Barry White.
Nice. I think it's a fun
just
name.
heard a rumor.
Honestly, I think it's a good idea. I mean, a lot of people, at least a lot of people like me, are more hesitant to try edge like really quickly moving rolling releases because of the potential to introduce bugs or introduce new forms of or workflows for different programs because they changed up their interfaces for one version to another. That's just the way I work. I like everything just to stay the same until I tell it to update. But this is a good middle ground approach to a approach to a rolling release, but keeping it a little bit more static. At least that's my 2 cents on it.
I got you. What do you think, Colin? Do you think... Oh, go ahead, John.
No, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt.
No, Colin, I was going to pull Colin out because he's been kind of quiet for like too long, but he's not ready, and you were. So go ahead, John.
Sorry, Colin. I'm just curious, since they're completely abandoning Leap, I'm assuming SUSE Enterprise, though, is still going to go to more of an is still going to keep to like an LTS type of thing, correct?
Yeah, so ALP, so it's the Adaptable Linux Platform is what it stands for. And that's essentially the direction of that SLE is going to go, is more of a platform that chunks can be put onto it so that it's supposedly it will reduce the technical liability in each release, essentially. That's the goal.
Yeah, I just I don't know. Maybe I'm just an old man, but
maybe
just thinking of how things work, like in the enterprise. I mean, even a slow rolling thing like that, even something like Fedora, where you get, I thought it was 7 months. Somebody corrected me; it was actually 13 months. Even that is way too fast for like enterprise stuff, and it's not about, it's not about like it's a little bit about bugs being introduced, but the problem is stability, like in the context that Debian talks about. It's not really talking about stability in as far as how stable is your system, how reliable is it. It's talking about stability of the packages. And that's what a lot of enterprise software, I mean, we don't use software for 1 year or 2 years. We use it for 10, 12, 15. Like that's not an exaggeration, right? And the developers of these software that cost millions of dollars, some of these applications, they're not going to release, they're not going to target a release that upgrades every 6 months, 12 months. You know what I mean? Like they just can't keep up. There's no way they can do it. I wish they could, but it's just not how enterprise development is done still. And so that'd be my fear is if they're moving too fast, it's gonna take them out of the running as a target for enterprise development.
Yeah, so I think the ALP, so it's basically a targetable platform. So the idea is that it would be easier to target is why they're going to this. And so I don't know how it's gonna all shake out in the end. It doesn't interest me as a user necessarily. Maybe as a sysadmin, because basically it's an immutable core to the operating system, and then things built on top of it with images of some kind, either like Docker-like images, or I think DOSBox is another method to do that. So I think the idea is it kind of seems to be like the direction of, between BlendOS and NixOS and all these other immutable Silverblue type or MicroOS even for the on the SUSE side. So there seems to be kind of the way of things, and I guess I kind of understand it. But as like an end user, like for my desktop, I'm not sure that it interests me all that much, if that makes any sense.
Well, doesn't Tumbleweed already does this? Well, it's not immutable, but if you do a search on the internet for the best rolling distro within Linux, you'll probably find that Tumbleweed is the one name that comes up all the time, and it's supposed to be well tested before all these updates come through. So, and I was running it for a while, as you know, Nate, and it seemed to be pretty stable. So, but you're saying that this new one is going to be like an immutable distro. Is that what you're saying?
No,
it's going to go that way.
What I'm saying is, so you have Tumbleweed, which is fast rolling, then you have Leap, which is a more static.
Yeah.
That one is going away and being replaced with ALP, which is a immutable platform. Okay. And so basically they're replacing immutable, Leap with Slowroll, which is a little bit faster than Leap, but it's static based on for a month or two at a time. So that's the difference. It's basically for desktop use essentially. I guess you can do server too, but it's a little bit faster, and then they're just basically pulling from. Oh, I see prophetic here. They're pulling from the from Tumbleweed. So I think
sounds a bit like what. Sorry, Nate.
No, go ahead.
No, it sounds a bit like what Rhino Linux does. I think they push through with the interim releases with Ubuntu. And update that way, I'm pretty sure, unless they've changed it. But so it is sort of static for a while. Then once the interim Ubuntu releases come through, they update everything according to what the interim release is. So and a lot of the times the interim releases might have bugs, but they're sort of released as stable, aren't they? So it sounds like it's a little bit that way, but in the open source world. Yeah. I'm not sure if that makes any sense or not.
I think it does. Prophetic.
I was going to chime in real quick. Yeah, hey, this is like a fascinating space for me, and I wanted to chime in on the enterprise thing, especially when you talk about systems that needed support for like 10 years. So on paper, yes, that's very true, that systems, you want it to be as stable as possible, don't touch it as much as possible. But a funny thing happens with businesses, especially big companies, big enterprise needs, is that they don't want any bugs or any downtime. But as the business evolves, because you think a span of 10 years in a tech system or a tech industry, business needs evolve a little bit, and you'll be surprised how many of those customers come back and say, oh, we need to be able to do this, or we need this type of thing, this kind of functionality to be built on top of it. And when you try to meet that need, you find, the underlying system is a little older, so we need to backport or patch things. And ALP is really meant to be that immutable core that you can easily swap out underneath without, or build on top of and swap out the things on top of without going into that risky territory of breaking systems or adding like unnecessary overhead, or not unnecessary, necessary overhead to get the customer happy. And that's that tension that they're trying to solve for. So with ALP, ideally, you'll be able to retroactively patch things and update things with very minimal risk, and also hopefully see some better performance as well. And so that's where that enterprise need comes in, because some customers say they want this, but in reality, they want to have their cake and eat it too. And that's ALP is trying to answer that.
Yeah, I assume they're doing that with, that's where the immutability and the container piece of it comes in. You know, you can keep all those static dependencies in the container and then upgrade the platform underneath it, which is good. I mean, it's a great way to do it. I was thinking more just as far as the library stuff. You know, you in the vertical market, you like whatever application XYZ, you know, comes out, it targets a very specific library. And like I work in healthcare, so it's not just a matter of targeting a library. It's like an FDA approval that requires this exact software, this exact build number, right down to the firmware that runs on the device. You know, it's very, very specific. And so you don't even really have an option. You know, you're waiting for the next FDA approval to come out so that you can patch a 8-year-old bug, you know, type stuff. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous system, but nonetheless, that's how it works.
Yeah, I think especially libraries and runtimes is going to be a big help in this area. Firmware, I think we're not there yet, but maybe one day.
Yeah, it's also the same thing in some manufacturing environments as well, because I remember when I worked for several factories back in the day, especially Coleman. Some of those computers that were running things and were about 25, 30 years old, and they couldn't update them because the equipment that they were running on, that they were controlling was also 25 or 30 years old. We had blow molds that were almost 50 years old in that building, and they still had to run computers from 35 years ago in order to actually work. It was actually a nightmare to try and get everything straight, especially when updates came through and broke your compatibility and you had to roll it all back.
Well, I was curious, Prophetic, did you have any thoughts on the Slowroll distribution? Do you think that's a good replacement for Leap?
Yeah, I drank the rolling Kool-Aid.
Uh-huh.
And so
is this my fault at all that you're using OpenSUSE?
You were the gateway drug.
I was. Okay. Should I apologize?
You were the gateway. No, absolutely not. You were the gateway drug, and then a couple of Richard Brown's blog posts and essays really sealed the deal. Slowroll is going to be awesome for people who really are paranoid. But personally, I just think like with snapper rollback and this amazing ability to just like, hold back on updates as you see fit, with Tumbleweed, I think it's, fine as is, but I'm sure there's a market for people who want it, and I'm happy that we're delivering.
I think that in my mind, I'm thinking, for those that are not necessarily very computer, they only use computers to get things done. They're not enthusiasts. So non-computer enthusiasts, I think Slowroll is a lot better for, especially if they can integrate with like a desktop icons or desktop tool utilities for doing the updates. So you don't have to go to terminal to do sudo zipper dup or whatever to make it happen. I think that's the big hang up, I think, with Tumbleweed and being adopted by non-computer enthusiasts.
Yeah, and I was sneaking a quick plug. This is why I love Aeon OS, which used to be Micro OS desktop. Mm-hmm. It's because the updates and all that stuff are in the background. So when I hear someone say they're not super computer savvy, this would be great for non-computer savvy people, my brain immediately goes to like Chromebook-esque experiences like Silverblue or Aeon OS. But again, that's like still, a lot of people are still getting comfortable with immutability overall.
I think Flatpak's got a way to go yet, as far as there's a lot of things that are just not quite solved yet on the Flatpak side of things.
For the pro user or the like average computer user?
A little bit of both. So some things like OBS as a Flatpak, you can't really do a lot of the extensions and additions to it like you can with the native packages. And
yeah, that's true.
It has to do with just the security piece of it, and so it makes sense why it is the way it is.
Yeah.
But so I think just some things need to be worked out yet, but I think it's very close. I run a lot more Flatpak. It doesn't deter me from running Flatpak, but I run a lot more Flatpak now than I have in the past, because it's just, it's a great way to get reliable results in software. So in fact, a piece of software I use all the time now is a Flatpak, which helps me to manage my multiple worlds coexisting. So it's called Junction. So if I click on a link, and if it's for my personal email, but I really want it to go toward a work, like to open up an Edge browser instead, I can select that. I can direct paths, and it's a Flatpak, and it works great. Integrates fantastically well.
Yeah, sounds awesome.
Little things like that, yeah.
Wow.
But there's other applications that like are just terrible as a Flatpak, at least in Plasma, because there's some Flatpak integrate theme-wise perfectly, no problems, not even a little, and there's some that just look terrible, and they continue to look terrible. Like they have their dark theme, but then have like a white menu bar at the top. It just looks awful.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what's now the snap or the app image, perfectly fine, but Flatpak, just something is still a little bit screwy with Flatpak, and I hopefully it gets fixed. And I think that once it does, and then I think it'll be tip top.
Fingers crossed.
They all have their challenges. Prophetic, I totally agree with that. My first thought with the immutable stuff, like, I mean, certainly again in the enterprise, very attractive. Like there's but also, man, my mother-in-law, perfect.
Yeah. The measurement for me was I gave someone a micro OS desktop tower, and I haven't heard one word with support from them, and it's been like 4 months now, and they're using it in dandy, no problems. That's a huge testament to how far it can go.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Since you mentioned Junction, I'll just give a shout out for Dunst, DUNST. So what you're doing with mail links, I'm sort of doing something similar with Linux notifications. So if a notification comes in, you can Dunst is basically a notification daemon, and you can have it send the notification to a script or a program or whatever, and have it do different things based on what is within the notification. You'd want to be able to, be, I guess, basic level at writing scripts, but yeah, that's a cool function I use sometimes.
What desktop environment do you use with that?
XFC.
Okay.
But Dunst is, yeah, it's agnostic. Okay. And it will also work on Wayland. So it's Wayland or X11.
Nice. I'm gonna have to look into
that. It'll work on XWayland. I'm not sure if straight Wayland, but anyway, it's all XWayland at the moment, I think.
Well, that is a fantastic segue to the next story, which also came from the Telegram group newsfeed. I'm not sure who contributed that one. Let me check, see if I can find it. This is contributed by Eris. So Eris threw this in there. But it's XWayland's Rootful mode is more useful. So I don't know if you're familiar with how Wayland or XWayland works, but it's been using a rootless mode. Or if you're familiar with that, so that when Wayland compositors in the rootless mode, the client it's the client compatibility on top of Wayland's compositor. So the Wayland rootless mode X11 applications and games integrate nicely with Wayland desktop environment with just the individual client window presented. However, for those interested, the XWayland Rootful mode has become more capable this year for those wanting to render an entire X11 environment with the Wayland compositor as a window. So Red Hat's Oliver Forden, who contributes extensively to the Wayland ecosystem, has begun blogging about improvements to the XWayland Rootful mode. Since XWayland 23.2 this year, the mode has become more useful, and with now allowing geometry resolution of the desired nested X11 server. So, which I think is incredibly great news, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. So, libdecor integration for providing the title bar window decorations with Wayland is a dynamically resizable Rootful window. So if you go to his blog, he digs into a little bit more. So, anyway, saying this is really good news. Like if you ever use, somebody here ever use what's it called? It's largely been considered a very insecure way of accessing another machine. XDMP or XDMCP. So you can, it's an old Unix way of, you can log into another machine using XDMCP from the login, like a terminal, login point. And so you can actually start an X session from another machine and have it come to your display, which I thought was actually a very cool thing, really.
Yeah, super useful. It actually ran in the old days, at least. You could run it over SSH with compression. Yep. And frankly, worked pretty good.
Yeah, it worked great. I used that a lot, actually. And then I remember when there was all the security craziness around it. It was turned off by default, like in Linux distributions, probably in like the mid-aughties, mid-2000s. And then
most of that was pretty mitigated, though, just by, I mean, basically, if you just allow it to listen on localhost only and force SSH to get there, and SSH didn't seem to hurt. I mean, I ran whole labs, 30 machines off that way, off of like a server.
Yeah, it was I thought it was it was great, very user excited. A lot of CAD work at the time, and we had a bunch of Unix machines, and so I would push my CAD machine basically to its hard, like with some of these complex assemblies, and so I would know which CAD machines weren't being used, and so I would use those remotely so I could get some other work done at the same time. And I don't know if I was allowed to do that or not. I just did it. You know, it's one of those things like nobody explicitly told me no. But anyway, it was very useful. And yeah, it was kind of sad when that became more difficult. So anyway, I just think it's neat because so there's some old lab equipment that HP released. Like this is probably like from the 90s is when I stopped using it, essentially, maybe early 2000s. But it uses their like oscilloscopes that have like a whole like testing kits in like one PC-ish kind of thing, but it's an appliance, and you could actually access all that stuff remotely using, you know, X11 forwarding essentially. So this would allow for you to actually look at that entire X session then on a Wayland machine without any issues. And I think this is really good news for, you know, utilizing some old equipment that I think is still really awesome. It's just not being utilized as much. So anyway, so this to me I think is really cool, and it'd be fun to play with. I kind of want to see if maybe I should set up a box like with an old copy of something, like an old version of Mandriva or something like that, and see if I can get this to work. If I had the time, I would definitely do that.
That'd be awesome. I'm looking forward to that too.
Or I have an old Unix box that has CDE on it. That might be fun just to see if I can. I haven't used it in decades. I don't even know if the thing still runs, but that'd be fun too.
What is it? Solaris?
No, it's HP Unix.
Oh.
Yeah, it's one of my old CAD stations I used to work on. Somehow I got it.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, they didn't want it anymore, so I just had to sign some paperwork. Now, does anybody know if when an application's using XWayland or Wayland when they're running a Wayland session? This might be more of a prophetic question. It seems like he would know this.
Repeat the question.
Like, how do you know when an application is not native Wayland and is using XWayland? Like how would I know as a user? Or maybe I don't know, and that's the beauty of it.
The only way I know is when I edit a video and I put text on the screen, it'll be blown up off the screen pretty much when I'm using Wayland. That's in GNOME. I haven't tried Wayland in KDE yet, but I always have that problem when I'm using Kden Live. It just blows up text. So I don't know if that problem disappeared. I haven't tried it.
Well, I don't remember who said this. It wasn't my idea, but I heard somebody talking about it. It might have been in one of the podcasts. Anyway, they were saying one of the best ways to do it is just fire up XEyes, the XEyes application, and when you move the mouse across any X application, the eyes will look. But when you're in a Wayland application, they won't.
Right.
And there's another.
It's interesting.
There's another method that you can use as well. Is run the program from a terminal. It'll tell you if it's using xlibs or not.
I was going to say you could use xprop, and then you could click on the window. I don't know if that would work, but you could give it a go.
Yeah, but yeah,
XEyes sounds simple enough to me.
Yeah, that's the cooler way. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's cool, but honestly, I always just fired up a terminal just to figure it out.
Oh, look at that! Yeah, if I'm on the desktop, XEyes doesn't follow me anymore. Oh man, that's so sad.
How do you install that? Is that a Flatpak or a repos?
It's just in the repos. So I just did on OpenSUSE I just did OPI XEyes because I wasn't sure if it was in the main repository anymore. And
how do you spell it?
X.
Just with an X.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Check it out. Sounds cool.
It's an old school Linux utility. Goes back to the early days.
Yes, it does.
I'm all for simple.
Yes, it does. Now I'm curious to see if, because like the only application I really have a problem with is LibreOffice and scaling properly.
Mm-hmm.
And nope, it's not following me there. I know. I think XSize needs to be patched.
This is unreasonable, but I want LibreOffice to have a dark theme.
It does. I use it all the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
No, I mean like on the document as well.
You can do that. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't use
yeah.
it on the document though. I did at one time, but it made
my life's about to change.
Yeah, it made me a little crazy, so I stopped using it that way.
That's one thing I'm gonna miss is when I finally switch to Wayland all the time is all the little X toys like X Snow and everything like that.
Hey, and just to mention, there are like derivatives of the the little X toys, but like it's best to go to the GitHub and check out the project instead of get a feel for whether or not
Yeah.
it looks like somebody you'd want to trust in terms of installing their software, because I've had some interesting surprises with derivatives that just have like W instead of X in the name. So just a recommendation there.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of really fun like silly tools like that, like XIs. There was another one where you could have like penguins crawling on your desktop, and then they would just like spawn. Did anybody ever play with that? I don't know.
What was that called?
I think it was just like X Penguin or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right. But yeah, I used that back in the day, but I haven't put that on a system in a long time.
I don't know if used is the right word for that.
Played with.
All right. So I don't know if anyone saw this article about it was in Ars Technica, but Linux gives up on 6-year LTS kernels. Says they're too much work. So I guess that's fine for PCs but bad for Android. I don't know if anybody read about this or saw this, but I thought it to be very interesting. On one side, I don't know that it's that big of a deal. But at the same time, I can see why it would be an issue. Does anybody have a kernel that's actively running that's 6 years old on anything?
Oh yes.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, I'll ask you. I'm just gonna read the first part of this. So the LTS or long-term support period for the Linux kernel is being cut down. In 2017, the kernel jumped the 2 years of support to 6. Now 6 years later, turns out that's a lot of work. So ZDNet reports that the Open Source Summit Europe this when was this? A couple weeks ago, in September. The Linux Weekly news executive editor Jonathan Corbett announced that the Linux kernel will return to a 2-year LTS support. The plan to cut back down to 2 years isn't instant. The Linux community is still honoring the current end-of-life timelines. So 6.1, 5.15, 5.10. 5.1, 4.19, and 4.14 are still 6 years, but new kernels will only get 2 years. So even the 6-year window was supposed to be an optional thing when it started, with the release pages FAQ saying each new long-term Linux kernel usually starts with only 2-year projected EOL and then can be extended further if there's enough interest from the industry at large to help support it for long periods of time. The reality was that everything that received a 6-year lifespan, and now that will no longer be the case. Corbett decided a mix of lack of use and lack of support as the reason Linux is cutting back on the LTS kernels. There's really no point in maintaining old kernels that long because people are not using them. The other big problem is the burnout from maintainers, which are often unpaid and could use a lot more support from the billion-dollar companies that benefit from using Linux. So, John, you said that you have a lot of things you have some things that are taking advantage of the 6-year support.
No, none of them have support. It goes way beyond 6 years. I was trying to find my oldest box. I actually have to dig up the IP addresses and log it. I ran across it not too long ago, but it's I've got a box in production that I believe is running Debian 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
What year was Debian 7?
I do not even know.
What Debian 7? What that would be? What, early 2010s? I think.
I don't know. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, we got the internet.
We do have the internet. That's how we're talking.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm unable to connect to Debian.org. Oh well.
I'm saying June 4th, 2016.
Yeah, that's what I got. Oh, yeah, Debian 7 was released on 4th of May 2013. Yeah.
Wheezy.
Yeah.
I think it was at an episode of Linux User Space where I learned that, I think it was from Leo talking about this, that every version of Debian is based on a Toy Story character.
It is.
And I didn't realize that. Somehow I totally missed it. Like I thought, oh, that kind of reminds me of Toy Story. But I never actually put 2 and 2 together on that. So that's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I love the Debian project. They came up, but I think that like the main developer, one of the girlfriends really loved Toy Story, and that's why they started naming them this way.
Like
I think that's
Debbie.
the story. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, regardless, I think it was really neat thing there. So I thought, anyway, one more reason to like Debian, I suppose. So anyway, do you think that this is so back to the Linux kernel business? So they say that no one was actually utilizing, or the amount of use on those older kernels is just wasn't happening. So do you think they'll probably go for like if a business really needs it, they're just gonna charge them, gonna try maybe monetize it in some capacity?
Well, it's the kernel developers themselves. So honestly, I don't think it changes much. I think it'll worst case it shifts a little bit of the work to the companies like Red Hat that do the Red Hat and Canonical are the main two. I guess SUSE too. Those three. I mean it shifts a little bit more of the onus on them to maintain those old kernels, but they're doing a lot of that work anyway. So
right.
Yeah. And even Canonical, they backport the newer kernels to the LTS. They don't actually sit there on the same kernel for 10 years. 5 years, 10 years in the term of ESM. But yeah, so yeah, that's really what my answer was going to be. The only people it's going to affect is the LTS, like SUSE or Red Hat.
Yeah, and I imagine with things like the ALP for SUSE, that probably becomes less of an issue because they have the platform where they can swap things out more easily. What do you think, Colin? Do you think there's any this is going to cause any problems, any trickle down from this?
So I missed some of that because I had an issue. So I had to log out and log back in.
Oh, you break something?
Oh, just doing some silly things, that's all.
Oh, okay.
Things I probably shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I want to do some things.
What were we talking about again? We're talking about kernels.
Yes. So the going forward, there will be no more 6-year LTS kernels. They're going to go back to LTS. Will mean 2 years instead of 6 once again. So
right.
Yeah. So apparently the kernel teams are getting burnt out. So that's the reason why. And there also wasn't
they're getting burnt out
using them.
For making it 6 years long-term support, but wouldn't they get more burnout if it's every 2 years, or?
Well, you reduce your technical liability, because if you think about it, like how many overlapping kernels you have to keep track of and maintain when they last longer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There's less
True.
less work that has to be done.
I was talking
I
to
think
Neil.
whatever.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say whatever's best for, and makes it easier for the developers. I think that's the best way to go. I think they work pretty hard. I think these guys. I don't know much about it, but pretty sure they work pretty hard. So whatever's best for them, I think we should just jump on board.
Yeah. When you say prophetic, but you're talking to
I
Neil?
was gonna say I was talking to Neil about this, and every distribution it does some things to their kernel, just like with Android. You know, every distributor of Android does some things to their version of Android, and Ubuntu is you know, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, they have one of the most or highest amounts of like Linux kernel customization, add-ons, patches. So it's not surprising that they want to trim the fat, so to speak, in that regard. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would have any. Me personally, I don't have any issues with it. I think it's probably the best move to go to do this. So, I guess maybe Android might have some issues, but that's on Google.
I just logged into that box check. It's Debian 7.8 running kernel 3.2.
So is this networked in? So it's not talking to the outside, so you don't care about the end of life of the kernel, or am I missing something?
It's networked, but it's not networked to the outside world. It's on a private network. It's a storage server for a specific application that's long since retired, but we have to maintain it to get to pull data from it occasionally.
Gotcha.
So do you spin it up and down when needed, or is it up all the time?
Yeah, it just runs. There's a few things using it, but yeah, we end up doing a lot. We end up with a really complicated network with all the air gapping and stuff we have to do, because generally some of the stuff that we can't get rid of, that's usually the solution that we mitigate it with, is we put it on private networks and air gap everything. But that, you know, managing that is quite a chore.
Yeah, I believe it. So I have this new job I have, maybe not so new anymore, as an IT manager. I keep learning of new systems and different ways these things are actually connecting. So one of the things I tried to do was I moved what I thought was everything off the SQL2 to SQL3, and I was 100% confident in my lack of understanding that it was good to go to shut things down. This SQL2 just kind of spin that one down, and even like stop doing backups on it and everything, and shut it down. And then anyway, no problems. And about like 2 weeks later, the wastewater guys are like, "Hey, we're not getting any reports anymore." I'm like, oh no. So spun it back up, and now I'm actively working on trying to move that over now. So it's a little more complicated than I actually understood. So I'm trying to get all that migrated, but I need a lot of help with that. So anyway,
SQL
is what's that?
SQL can be tricky.
Yes, and it's kind of fun, maybe funny, when I make mistakes. I kind of wonder, like, how many more mistakes can I make before people just had it with me?
Oh, nah, it's just part of the territory. It's the way it is everywhere.
Growing pains, as it's called.
Yeah. I can remember years ago, I would, you know, like doing consulting work and stuff. I'd go into these places and start looking around, and your first thought is always, oh my goodness, like what idiot like set all this up? Who didn't know what they were doing? But you reach a point in your career where you'll go into a place like that or some kind of project, and you think it looks really stupid, and then it starts looking familiar, and eventually you realize that you were the idiot that set all this up. and you're coming across your own work back when you didn't know, you know, like maybe didn't know quite as much, or, you know, or sometimes you just start going down the rabbit hole and you're like, oh, that's why I did that. Oh, that's why I had to. Oh, that's you start running into the same roadblocks, and you end up with the same solution. Like, oh, that's why this looks so stupid, because I had to do it this way. So anyway, I'm pretty forgiving now. When I go into these environments, I never bash the previous person. You know, there's usually reasons, and everybody's environment is a mess when you start digging into it.
Yeah. Well, I think part of my problem was I didn't pay close enough attention, and I think Leo did say it in the chat. It says, If you're unsure if something's being used, turn it off and see what happens. You'll find out real quick. And so it's just wastewater. That's the last one. That's what I missed. I missed everything but the wastewater. So anyway, good times.
Yeah, still not too bad. My favorite of the old crap, going back to that, I think I might have posted it in the group when I ran across it, but we shut down a hospital in 2020, I believe it was. And when I was going through, when we were clearing everything out of it and going to stuff, I found in production, mind you, this was actually running equipment. I found a PowerMac 7300 running System 7.5 Mac OS.
Nice.
Actually live in production. Yep.
What was it doing?
It was running, I believe it was either a nuclear medicine machine or a bone density machine, one of the two. It was I think it was bone density, if I remember right. It was one of those two. It was in the radiology department. But yeah, still happily running along, working just fine.
I can do you one better, John. I found one at Coleman that was running DOS 4 still in production. It was running, let's see, what was it running? It was running actually an assembly line computer.
Man.
They just haven't updated it because it works just fine on that equipment, and they haven't replaced that equipment yet. So they were running DOS 4 with some application that ran everything on that line.
Not to derail, I had one of those stories. This was years ago, but I had a customer that I was helping move to Active Directory. They were going from like NT4 to Active Directory, so it was quite a while ago. But they we were kind of at the tail end of the project, had everything moved, but they were still running this old Netware, Novell Netware 4 server, and search could not find it. Search and no one could remember it being there for years, but it was literally on the network. Like I could see it. They had shares going to it, everything. And finally, after I don't know, it was 2 or 3 days of searching, we had that one of the secretaries was like, the last time that I ever saw it, it was in this closet when we remodeled the building. Like, but we got rid of that closet. Like we remodeled and did all this stuff, and we kind of figured out where it was. And they ended up walling off the closet in part of this remodel. So we tore the wall out, and sure enough, there's this Netware server still running happily along. They just walled it up, and the thing had never shut off, never rebooted.
Wow.
Been in there for years. No airflow, no anything. But
no one even asked why this server was being walled off.
No, I don't think they even knew. I think the contractor just came in and just came in and was like, well, this space isn't on the drawing, so we're just gonna
wall it off.
Close it up.
All right. Yep. Okay. So that sort of like brings like a lot of like questions to me. Like what was this computer doing that was doing something? Was it still even being utilized? Like, was it actually a critical piece?
So it had been their main server years before. They'd been on Netware, right? And their main application, their main shares, everything ran on Netware, and they were still using it for like some address book application they had, some other stuff. And then they had migrated from Novell to Windows to NT4, but they just kept on using this old Netware server. It just kept working. No one asked any questions. No one knew anything about it. Staff turns over, everything. And then they migrated to Active Directory. I think they'd already done that. And I was actually upgrading. I was moving them to a new version. So they were like a couple versions down. They had gone to Active Directory from NT4, and then I was upgrading them to like probably Windows 2003 or so, Server 2003 or something at the time, and doing some upgrades. Might even been 2008. I can't remember. It was it might have been 2008 anyway. But yeah, no one had any clue. They're like, oh, that's just the old server, and no one even knew what it was. I mean, I was looking at it saying, no, this is a Netware server, and it is running. Like, it's somewhere here in the building. Like, you guys have to be connected to it. And yeah, we searched for days. It was amazing.
And how did you? I mean, if it was walled off, how did you find it? Did you like put a hole in the wall and like, oh, there it is? You find like trace things down?
we actually took measurements. We took measurements, and how we ended up finding it was we traced an Ethernet cable in like through the attic, through the ceiling, and it was dropping down, and that's how we could see that room was there. The secretary just remembered. She just remembered like where it was. She said, "Oh, it used to be sitting in this closet that was right here," and was saying they had remodeled everything and moved everything around. But so we got up in the attic and we followed the cables, and we found that it was that there was the live we traced it down via the MAC address to find the cable, and we found that this cable was dropping into this room that didn't exist, but it was in between two rooms. And she's like, "Oh yeah, that's where that closet was." So we put it together that way, that they must have closed it off somehow. There's no access to the closet anywhere, so we ended up going into a room and tearing the wall out, putting a hole. We just put a small hole first and then shined the light in there. And
did the
closet
room
still existed.
Did the room have like a light switch in there someplace too?
It might have. I mean, it was off if it was in there, but I mean, they just closed off the whole thing. Yeah.
I'm just trying to go
like you, Nate. I got many questions.
I was thinking from like
I do too.
The contractor perspective, like, all right, let me shut this light off, and I'm gonna go ahead and close it up. Like somebody.
So
this room is important.
I get when it comes to construction. When it comes to construction, there's two things I can tell. So one thing, hospitals are under construction all the time. We're constantly remodeling, right? And the two things I can tell you is that these construction people, as they're working, their way to test anything is to cut it. If they find cables, they cut them or rip them out. That's what they do. You know how many times we have fiber cuts anytime like part of the building is under construction? They find it in the ceiling, it gets cut. And when things go down, they're like, "Oh, oops, yeah, we didn't think that was used anymore, so we cut it." So that's one thing. And then probably the worst outage I ever had, our main server closet. This is our server closet, almost everything in it. On a Friday. So it used to be in the building where the IT department. Sorry for the boring story here, but anyway.
No, this is great.
And we got bumped out, and they built an oncology clinic in our area, but we couldn't move the server room, so we just left it. So we still to this day have a server room sitting in the middle of our oncology clinic, right, at one of our hospitals. But when they remodeled it, they left this alone. They left the server room alone, and it was did all the plans, everything. Well, we had this training room next to it, and there was this weird slanted wall between the training room and the server room. It was how they did it at the this weird slanted wall divided the thing. So without it being in the drawings, without asking anybody, without doing anything, the construction guys decided they were going to fix that wall and make it not slanted anymore, right? So they tore the wall in our live server room. They tore the wall out of it. No, nothing happened, right? They thought they were doing a great job. They tore it all out. They built a whole new wall, set it all up. Still no problems. Everything was fine. Then on a Friday afternoon, they sheetrocked it inside of our server room. So they were blowing sheetrock dust everywhere. So on Friday afternoon, we start getting some alerts, some drive failures. We're like, what? Then we're booting things up. They come back up, but then they shut back down, and other things are. It was so crazy. I thought we were under attack. I mean, I literally thought it was like a cyber attack. I'm like, I think there's a cyber attack. I've never seen like it. So, but one of our techs I'm like, "Hey, dude, can you get into that? Can you get in there and just look and see what's going on? Because something weird is going on." Anyway, so one of my techs ends up going in there and sends me a picture, and there's half an inch of sheetrock dust blanketed over our entire server equipment. Everything's been all sucked through the drives. Yeah. So we spent probably the last 3 or 4 weeks frantically trying to swap out drives, cleaning up the dust, trying to like keep them alive long enough to like for our critical stuff not to go down. We had to shift stuff. I mean, it was a absolute nightmare. Yeah. Because they just arbitrarily chose to go in and sheetrock our live server room. And thought, no big deal.
That's
just because there's
fantastic.
500 spinning drives in here. Yep.
Absolutely fantastic.
It was a fun few weeks.
Maybe you put a leaf blower in there you can activate remotely. safety mechanism, it detects the air quality and leaf blower goes on.
Oh
It,
yeah.
like, kicks up and like into above the ceiling tiles. Wow, that's amazing. So
Wow.
speaking of an old system still in use, I don't know if this is an older story. It's so don't click on it if you're afraid of the Facebooks, which I would be. But in a nutshell, this Commodore 64 is used by a small auto repair shop for balancing drive shafts, and it's been working nonstop for over 25 years. Mm-hmm. And despite surviving a flood, it's still going. In Poland.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But
so it looks like it's survived a flood, and no keyboard protector on there, nothing. But anyway, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That should be impossible. There's no way that thing should still be running. Well, all right. That was a lot of fun. We didn't get to the story on Canonical, but they're sticking with a 10-year support cycle. We could talk about that another time. So next week is next week there will not be a Linux Saloon. So I'm going to be in Latvia for the Canonical Developer Summit. So I'm going to be flying Wednesday, I think. And so I don't want to put Linux Saloon on the calendar, and it's going to be a part of the world that there's no way. I mean, I love you guys. I think you're the best people on the planet, but you're not like 2:00 in the morning best people on the planet. So anyway, I can't do that.
Welcome to my world, Nate. Welcome.
So I need I would say I need my beauty rest, but I need my not turn into a troll rest. So anyway, maybe I'll try and do something, maybe some kind of while I'm there, maybe go live, walking around like a weirdo, talking to people. But we'll see how that goes. I don't have anything locked in yet. This is my first time going to Latvia. I've been to Europe many times, but this will be my first time going to Latvia. So it's looks like a nice little area, right on the Baltic Sea. And I don't know, we'll see how it goes. But anyway, so I'm very grateful for being invited to be a part of that. I'm basically going to be an imposter there because I don't know why they would have Cubicle Nate go there, who is an OpenSUSE user that barely uses Ubuntu, to be at an Ubuntu summit. But I'm very grateful for the invitation, and I couldn't turn it down, so I will be there.
Yeah, sounds like fun.
Yeah, so we'll see.
They invite people from all over the world. Ubuntu is just amazing like that. Last summit, I was incredibly lucky enough to be sponsored to go, and the amount of just random people that are just from all walks of life across FOSS that was just absolutely astounding, and everybody was incredibly lovely. I remember that the most. Some of the most welcoming people that I've ever met. So if you're in the area, it is something that is well worth going to. I cannot recommend it enough. It's just it's something good. It's something good. So yeah, fond memories of going last time.
Well, I'm gonna miss seeing you there, Ulfnick, but hopefully another time, I guess. Hopefully,
yes, next year.
So I will be helping Michael from Tux Digital. I'm gonna be his lackey, helping him with things, like doing media stuff there. So it should be fun. There will be a lot of live streams from him for sure. I do want to do something Linux Saloon related. We'll see how it goes. I'll bounce it off other people to see what. But anyway, so the following week we're gonna do an application appetizer. I think we're just gonna go ahead and just call it a potluck. So bring something cool you use that other people should give a try. That's what we'll do. So nothing crazy. Just bring something, just whatever, anything that interests you, and we'll talk about just whatever. So it's called an application appetizer potluck. So no hot mayonnaise pasta salad preferred. So if that's your application, please don't do that. Anybody go to one of those potlucks and someone brings hot mayonnaise salad? It's great. All right, for some housekeeping, if you have any suggestions, send them to suggestions at linuxsaloon.com, whether it's about a distribution, application, or any poll ideas. We also have a news thread group, subgroup, whatever, in Telegram for any news that's Linux tech and open source related. So that's where a lot of these stories came from over there. So you can do that. Please join our Telegram. It's kind of cool. We have a lot of people there and different places to talk about different things. So it's getting it's been growing a little bit in the last week or so. So anyway, check that out. All right. So for our last call, Colin, you said you just released a video. We should check that out. It's on what you're doing with the scripting, right? I forgot what it's called already.
Yeah, YAD forms and
YAD
scripts.
Forms. Okay. Yeah, excellent. So make sure you check that out. Colin is getting his video chops back on. I got to make sure I watch that. So Steve's very own, he usually does a live stream Sundays. I don't know if he is. I haven't checked YouTube today, so I don't know if he did a notification for any upcoming stream. But if he does do a stream, he does it Sunday mornings at 8:15 a.m. Central. Sometimes 8:30. Sometimes 8:30. So check that out on YouTube. Linux User Space is a fantastic podcast. So Leo and Dan, they're not always on the show, but they support me a lot behind the scenes, doing a lot of things for me. So I just like to make sure I call out Linux User Space. They are doing an XFC history up next, but Monday they're gonna have a fresh topic episode with touch of history. I think that's what. Hopefully that was updated, Leo. So check that out, linuxuserspace.show. I'm on a podcast called Linux Out Loud. We actually did a recircle and talked about we circled. We circled back. We talked about a subject we from the previous episode about interesting Bluetooth hardware for like Bluetooth speakers in a pillow and a bunch of other things related to that tangentially. So that's one of the topics. I have a website called cubiclenate.com. I did an article about OpenSUSE's doing an upgrade on a system that had an 18-month update gap. So with Tumbleweed, so I did a rolling distribution that tolerated 18 months between updates. So it's pretty fantastic to that it's that sturdy, that resilient for my bad sysadmin behavior. Also, I found a solution for my Ender 3. I would start a print, and it would say extruder heating, but the extruder would be heated, but it wouldn't actually extrude, just kind of got stuck there. So there's a way to give it a nudge so that it actually works. And it's been working 100% of the time to give it a little bit of a nudge, and then it actually starts printing. So it's very important because I've been printing a lot of things here for getting ready for Christmas light stuff. I don't know if anybody else has anything they wanted to talk about. I know, Swift, you got yourself a Telegram group as well for the nerds. So I know that's something that I enjoy. I don't know if that's a public group or not, but I do appreciate that. I don't know if Terry or if Ulf Nick, Jind, anybody, if anything they wanted to talk about. John? No? Nothing? We're good? All right. Well, thank you very much. Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network. Check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com. I want to thank you all for your support, however you do it, at being a part of the conversation in both the Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream, as well as for everyone who watches the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back into personal computer. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers. And please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yas.
Bye.
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 Hey guys.
See ya.